Ms. Lajano,
Here.
Ms. Benitez, Ms. Damasio, Ms. Cardoza, Ms. Tejada,
Here.
Mr. Ochapinti, Mr. Lefko,
Here.
Ms. Salahuddin,
Here.
and Mr. Little.
Here. Ms. Dalmasio, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item number 8, approval of the agenda. Dr. Gloria, are there changes to the agenda?
I would like to recommend that we move the action item for Mr. Lefko up to when you do the communication.
So moving item 15B1 up.
Yes, please.
Oh, we can move it up, I think, under 10A. So is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. There is nothing to report out of closed session, so we will go ahead with item 10A to honor our soon-to-be departing colleague, Mr. Braxton Lefko. So item 10A1, presentation from the Office of Assembly Speaker Pro Tempore, Kevin Mullen.
Get there and go together.
Right here's good.
Yeah, that's fine.
If you wanna.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Elmer Martinez. I'm Senator Jerry Hill's district representative. About to give myself a promotion. It's an honor to be here with you at the board, and it's an honor to be here to recognize, on behalf of State Senator Jerry Hill and Assemblymember Kevin Mullen, Braxton Lefko for his years of service on the Jefferson Union High School District. Being an elected official is never an easy job. In addition to all your responsibilities here on the board, you also have full-time jobs. And it takes a very special kind of individual to want to step up and make a difference in their community and add to the workload that they already have. So we just wanted to thank you for everything that you've done and wish you the best of luck moving forward. So on behalf of Senator Hill and Assemblymember Mullen, we would want to present you this resolution from the California State Legislature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to bring up the family? Pajamas right now?
Even better.
So cute. We could just talk now.
I'm 3D, okay, nice smile.
What a cutie.
I'll just do his job for you.
Oh, he's got a lot to say about it.
All right, and since you're busy celebrating, I'll take care of this. We'll do this one blue card here with Mr. Clayton Koo, please come up, regards to item 10A.
Mr. Clayton.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Clayton Koo. I am a board member for the Jefferson Elementary School District, and I just want to come here tonight to thank Mr. Braxton Lefko for all your service for our community and for all your hard work in making sure that education in this area is the best it can be, and just want to appreciate all the hard work and time that you take to do a great job. I'm sure I'll see you around, so just want to wish you all the best and thank you for your service.
Clayton.
And of course, we've moved up resolution number 2018-19/15, the commendation to Braxton Lefko from your colleagues on the Jefferson Union High School District Board of Trustees. And I'll go ahead and read it. Whereas Braxton Lethco was appointed to our Jefferson Union High School District Board of Trustees on January 4th, 2017, and served the students, staff, and community of our district until December 4th, 2018, a tenure of 23 months. And whereas Braxton Lethco has served our district with distinction, elected as clerk to our Board of Trustees, and during his tenure, he brought a valued high school teacher perspective to our board. And that perspective was delivered in a manner that was accessible to all, regardless of their personal educational experience. And whereas Braxton Lethco always greeted members of our board with a signature warm smile and a hug. And whereas Braxton Lethco, while a trustee for only a very short time, he made a lasting impression on all of his board colleagues who will strive to hold up his ideals so that his spirit will never truly leave our board. Therefore, be it resolved that our Jefferson Union High School District Board of Trustees and District Administration extend our appreciation to Braxton for his service to our district, including the most important work of a school board, the hiring of our current superintendent, Dr. Terry DeLoria. We commend him for his work to further the educational excellence of all district students during his brief but impactful tenure. Be it further resolved that our Jefferson Union High School District Board of Trustees and District Administration wish Braxton, his wife Tori, and son Dean the best as he continues serving the community in a variety of ways. So is there a motion?
Move to approve resolution. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
And you have this lovely.
And, indeed. And
Thank you so much.
Would you mind posing for a picture with her?
we can do that. Colleagues, come on up.
Right now?
Should have worn a
The accessible attire. Places? Okay, not that I'm taller or anything.
looks at the holidays.
All right. Moving on to item 11A.
Are we going to say something?
We can say something in our board report.
To Braxton?
Yeah, we want to do that. Or do you want to do that now? We can
Well,
do it now.
he has his own agenda.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, let's do it then.
So I just wanted to thank you for everything that you've done for our board. As soon as you joined our board, it was like a breath of fresh air with your opinions, and especially bringing a high school teacher's perspective, which I think was really valuable. I'm gonna miss our like edge and nerd conversations. It's really nice to have another board member that I can just geek out on education stuff, and you're just as excited to talk about it as me. My family really appreciates that as well, so they don't have to hear all the stuff that I want to talk about. And I just think about all of us when we were doing the process of hiring Terry, and that was insane. First hearing that, you know, Mr. Burns was leaving, and then getting through that hurdle, and then going through the process of hiring a new superintendent, a process that would normally take months. We condensed into 2 weeks pretty much, and spent almost 4 straight days together interviewing, and it just brought us all so close together, and we've been working as a really good team since then. And I'm just gonna really miss how positive and your light, and I wish you so much success moving forward, and please don't go away. I hope that you still stick around. Join the DAC. And still give input in the community. And I got you some edge and nerd books that I know you would enjoy.
Thank
You're the
you.
only person I would think to give those, because other people are probably like, why did she give me a book on equity and excellence? But I know you love it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Braxton, we went to a candidates forum when you were running for Daly City Council. We saw you up there. First of all, I go, who is this? I mean, who lives in my side of town, knocking on doors, but when you talked about being a high school teacher, you just lit up. And Kalima and I looked at each other, we're going, oh my God. And so I knew after that candidate forum, I had to go talk to you. Gave you my card, I said, keep in touch. And the day after the election, you emailed me, I think, and we kept in touch. And then you came out to do gift wrapping with Westmore High School. You and Tori spent time with our kids there, you know, helping us out. And you know, I was really championing you to get on this board. But I didn't realize until you got on this board what a huge impact you would have. And I mean, you're beyond intelligent. You're empathetic. You know what it's like to be out there working where you work, because that comes back to what our kids need here. And everything you say is so insightful. And, you know, the first meetings I was, oh my God, you know, I've never seen it from that point of view. It's almost like when our students talk, and I think, God, I've never seen it that way. I mean, Mr. Ochapente is also a high school teacher, but his point of view is different from yours, and to have both of you sharing that teacher's point of view is really amazing. But I know we're not going to lose touch, because you're a huge part of this board. And you're a huge part of our hearts. And so, and then also, I just want to thank you for, after my mother died, I came home and I found a plate of cookies in front of my door and a beautiful, God, the beautiful vase of flowers that Tori put together is so beautiful. And my son, who was home briefly from college, he took one bite of the cookie and he said, can I take these with me? So I had to save one for his sister, and he just took the rest. And so I just want to thank you and Tori and Dean also for everything.
Yes, absolutely, Tori. Thank you for letting us borrow for this long.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. And I mean, just going back over the past couple of years, just to know how much I've learned from you, you know, because I'm not an education professional, you know, and to really hear it from your perspective in the trenches, in a, you know, in a school with, you know, with the type of student population that you deal with. So it brings a really special perspective, especially from the equity and inclusion side of things. And it's really been, and you brought that from day one. You know, and it took some of us a little longer to get there. And so I'm really grateful to you for bringing that perspective. We've had definitely some great conversations over the past couple of years. And just so grateful to consider you a friend. And that, you know, this has just been the start of, you know, a great friendship that all of us will have with you, you know, over the years ahead. So again, just so grateful. Thank you very much for all that you've done for us and for this community and for all of our students. It's always funny to see you, you know, coming out of, you know, some classrooms carrying Dean, you know, or appearing at various public events, and there's Dean with you in the back of the room, or the couple of times where Dean was an honorary board member in closed session.
So, Dean heard some confident, I'm just kidding.
Lips are sealed.
Lips are sealed.
So, again, thank you so much for all that you've done for us. Dr. Lori, anything you'd like to add?
I would. I'll be brief. So, you know, one of the advantages to being older is that you see a lot, and it's unusual anywhere to have board members who know as much as all of our board does when it comes to teaching and learning. But Braxton, you in particular have been a real light to all of us when it comes to what good teaching and learning looks like, and reminding us that the students that drive us the most crazy are the ones who need us the most. So I want to thank you for that laser light focus on, we're really going to miss you. And I wouldn't say that if it weren't true. So don't go too far. I'll come over and have dinner. Maybe you'll let me babysit. And well done. We'll miss you.
Oh, man. I'll try to keep it brief and try not to get emotional, which I think I'm going to do better at not keeping emotional. I do good at not getting emotional when my wife is here, so I'll be surprisingly good at that. You know, there's a lot of different reasons why people come into education, and I think I've talked a lot about this at different meetings I've been to, which is that it's a challenging time to work in education in any capacity. We have, you know, there's different perceptions of people in education. I think I've mentioned before how many times people have said to me, like, if I lose my job, you know, I'll become a teacher. You know, it's like the lowest, you know, backup plan. And so just the way that people portray public education is very unfortunate for the amount of lives that it saves, and truly the rich education that is provided, and the amazing things that teachers do. For me, there's a few key motivations for me as an educator, and obviously some of it I frame, as I've mentioned before, with my father, who is the smartest man I know, but struggles with some basic reading skills, and as a result, you know, struggles with unemployment. It's like the system didn't work for my father, and so, you know, his day-to-day life is pretty challenging, you know, because just the way school is set up, it doesn't work for someone with dyslexia, and so he was never able to kind of come back from that. And I think about that. The other things that I think about now, you know, since I started student teaching, a lot of schools would talk about, you know, the struggles that they had with their students and how they were getting everyone to college. And as an educator, it's been one of the most devastating things to see my kids go off to college but not make it through the system that wasn't designed for them. It's just such a complicated system, and there's so much to navigate. That so many of my students will make it to college, but they don't make it through college. And so I tried consistently with the high school I teach at for them to focus on this after they leave our doors, like what's happening with them. And so I'm so grateful to be part of a district that, you know, when we were talking about that was something I you know, was like, this is something that's really been important to me ever since I started student teaching, and people, you know, really grabbed onto that and they're like, yes, like our job isn't done. Like we really need to have a vision. When I ran, you know, in my campaign statement, it said, I don't just teach, you know, I don't want to just teach students to solve math problems. I want them to solve problems for the rest of our life. And I'm grateful to be part of a board that in some ways thinks of the same way. And, you know, there's a lot of really challenging problems in public education. And I'm grateful to have a board that has been really solution-centered. You know, we have so much support, and we're lucky to have a team that works really well together. And so I'm excited for the future of that team. And I think, you know, finally, I'll just say, specifically to the board members, Rosie, I'm so grateful that, you know, that you invited me to come out. You know, the whole time, obviously, I was talking about education. I was clearly at the wrong place. You know, I clearly, you know, needed to be here, and I'm really grateful that you saw that in me. And, you know, Kalima, the same thing. You were at that meeting as well, and you were like, "Hey, Braxton, like we need you. You know, we would love you here." And Kalima's been good. She's, you know, checked me on some of my perceptions on stuff, and always brought things back to the bigger picture on like, what are we doing for these kids? And, you know, Andy also has done things for me where he's helped me see it from an organizational perspective, helped me kind of see like a broader, you know, from the culture and everything, what we're doing and kind of where we're going, and how grateful I am. I shared this story at one meeting, but, you know, from the time that we first met Dr. Deloria, there was, you know, it was a lot of deliberation between, you know, who we were going to hire. But it was unanimous, and it was clearly unanimous that you were who we needed, that your vision is what we needed for our district, and we have full faith in you. And so, all the other members of, the district office team, Candace obviously speaks up in many meetings, which I'm grateful for. Tony, my better half. It's very rare that a Braxton can run into a Tony and appreciate it. Tony's brought so much, and the focus of what's most important, which is the people. Like, we're in the people business. Working with Tina, as just like, to me, every time I'm working with Tina, it's like she's 2 steps ahead of where we need to be. And everyone praises Tina. Anybody that spends time with Tina, they're like, hey, we're really lucky to have Tina. Like, don't let Tina know that, though. And Corrine, obviously Corrine, same thing, which is back to like the work you put in. I'm grateful for that. And I'll always have a special relationship with Monica. Monica, from the time I visited Thornton about 2 months onto the board, ever since, we've always had a connection of this is what it's like to teach high school. So there's about my 5 minutes and Dean's 5 minutes as well. So I'll stop so that they can go. But I just want to say thank you so much, and it's been an honor to serve on the board. So thank you.
Thanks for clapping for him.
Yep.
That's okay.
All right. Item 11A, communications board report. We'll start at the far end of the table. Ms. Lejano.
Right now, our winter sports have started, so we have boys soccer for the first time, I think. And since we canceled school that Friday, we had to move our harvest fair to next Friday, so we're preparing this Friday. So we're preparing for that. We've been preparing this week and last week. And yeah, you're gonna hear more later, so that's it for me.
We also have our winter sports going on. We're still continuing construction on the infrastructure problem that we have on one of our buildings. This week's a Spirit Week for us, a Hawaiian holiday. The rally's on Friday. Our finals start on December 18th and they end on December 20th. And last week we did our 3rd and maybe final date of Outdoor Ed, which is where like high school students go and we volunteer as cabin leaders. I went last week and it was really fun. I had 13 boys in my cabin. Ooh, very interesting. I have a 6-year-old sister, but boys are so different. And I bring that up because I think it's awesome that we get to have that experience, like working with children like that hands-on. Yeah, it's something that's unique to schools in our area in California.
So we went to the California School Boards Association annual conference, educational conference. We did not cross any picket lines. And we're very proud of all of us for that, especially Ms. Salahuddin, who took a huge hit from the leadership of CSBA for standing up for us, standing up for our entire community. I can't say enough about that experience. We got to do better. And when our leadership isn't an example, when we have to bring it, we bring it. So that's what I'll have to say.
Hopefully other members will also echo Ms. Tejada's remarks, but I also want to publicly thank Ms. Salahuddin for, I think sometimes what's right is sometimes the more difficult right, and I would say like there was probably times when she felt alone when she was making the choices, and so I just want to say like how grateful I am for that leadership and that example, because she was definitely amongst the few, not the many, and there was opportunity for that to be, publicly reminded to her. So I just want to say she probably won't speak too much about it, but I just want to say to echo that how grateful I am to serve on a board with such strong leaders. The other thing I'll say about the conference is that I was grateful to go. Jefferson Union High School District presented, and I presume that President Lee will want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes.
But what I will say is, for me to be in that room, I had like taken pictures, and I was like, oh, I've heard the housing presentation 100 times. I'm going to go to another session. So I grabbed my backpack and I was taking pictures, and the people started asking me question after question. So many districts were saying, yeah, we've actually been trying to do this for a long time, or we are really interested in doing this. Like, how are you the first ones in the nation? And so I ended up like just, answering everyone's questions in the audience for a little while, and then just taking more and more pictures. And it was grateful to see, so many people that wanted to give this to their teachers or wanted to give this to their staff, but haven't been able to see it through, and to hopefully see this trend throughout the state of California, just because it's such a challenging, profession to do and to survive. And so I'm just grateful for our district to be a leader and to be in that room and to feel the energy there, and hopefully, a wave of districts supporting teacher housing.
Yeah, so CSBA conference was interesting. It was a lot of highs and lows. It wasn't just me, and the entire Region 5 delegation, all of us had agreed beforehand not to cross the picket line and support Unite Here Local 2, because those are a lot of our parents, so our district is suffering from declining enrollment because our parents can't afford to live here. And then also when we're talking about closing the equity gap, a huge way to close the opportunity gap in terms of equity is to have students whose parents can spend time with them because they don't have 2 and 3 jobs to pay their rent. So to me, it was a really big deal, and I was really shocked at the pushback from CSBA. So we're still waiting to hear exactly what's going to happen, but we already do know that, it wasn't just me. Alyssa McAvoy from Redwood City, who was in line to be vice president, did not get that position. So we were really shocked by that, and I'm assuming that I'm going to hear pretty soon that I'm going to be asked to be removed from the planning committee of the conference for next year. So we are probably, as Region 5, we're going to make the decision on whether the whole delegate assembly resigns, because if they're not going to represent us, I'm volunteering my time to represent them. And so the message was pretty clear that they felt we were all putting our personal beliefs before CSBA, and that is not what they want us to do moving forward. So yeah. And then so on the positives parts were the presentation was fantastic. I felt the keynote speakers were great. With the keynote speakers, all kind of blew my mind, because the one keynote speaker that CSBA picked said that you should question authority and constantly had friction and ask questions. So I was like confused on the messaging here, guys. But the keynote speakers I thought were both great, the general session speakers. And so I'm hoping that in future agenda item we have the conference on, because I would love to talk about a lot of the things that I learned from the different sessions that I went to, including one that was on student trustees, and another that was on the voices of the LGBTQ youth and how we can do more to make sure that those students are feeling more welcome and inclusive on our campuses. And then another one that was just on equity and access that was in line with the work that Andy and I have been doing with CSBA. So it's great.
It was a good conference. The issues that you've described aside, and I'm proud that we all stood together to just simply not cross any lines and to be able to just, support our families that way. My wife's a nurse. She's a union member. So that this is not something I would have ever crossed my mind to do. And it was pretty cool. I'm glad you brought up the presentation, Braxton, because it was, I mean, honestly, it was pretty cool to be up there. I mean, you know, sometimes you wonder, you know, when you go to these conferences for the first couple of times and you see these speakers, you wonder if you actually will ever know enough about anything to be able to do that. And for us, as a board, as a district, to actually be considered, you know, experts, so to speak, in this field of educator housing, and to be able to encourage other districts to do that. I think the sad thing is that the fact that we have to have this discussion is really the saddest part of it. But I'm glad that we are able to do it, because the work that we're doing in support of our staff, to give them a place to live that will be affordable, and to see so many districts across the state actually be so interested in doing it, and for them to ask us questions, and you know, to hear, you know, because you and I hadn't had a chance to debrief about that, so to hear that piece, that you're in the back of the room and people were asking, that's fantastic. I mean, that means that we're doing our work and we're doing our jobs. We're learning, and we know what it is that we have to do to make this project happen. You know, last night we had another facilities subcommittee meeting, and to see the next iteration of what the concept design will look like, and you know, and the fact that contractors are asking questions about what the next steps are in the process is really, really exciting. So I mean, again, I just want to say this thing's really happening, you know, and for people to come up to us and talk about it. I had a chance the next day to sit in on a table talk about housing that was presented from another firm, and it was, again, same questions came up, and it was really gratifying to be able to share that information with them, and for them, and to learn from them as well, in terms of what holistic things we could do as a district to provide not just housing, but the next steps beyond that. And for me, some of the sessions I attended happened to do with marketing and communications, PR. How do we market ourselves? Because, you know, in a declining enrollment district, we are competing against the private schools and charter schools, and we need to be able to, you know, really sell ourselves in a really positive way, and to hear from districts that are really effectively doing that and crafting their message and partnering with the businesses and local communities that they do is amazing. The equity session that you and I were in, and, you know, again, some of the same stuff, but it was a good refresher to be in that room. So that's it for me. It was great meeting.
So I too will talk a little bit about CSBA, but I'd like to kind of contrast what leadership looked like, as Ms. Salahuddin was talking about, versus the leadership the board has taken when it comes to housing. So it's not easy doing something like this. We didn't know anything about it at all. We had no idea how we were going to do it. We didn't know how we were going to communicate it, how we're going to pay for it. You know, is it going to work? And yet, it was always the why driving you, which I think is what helps in leadership. I mean, I think you've done an extraordinary job in a leadership perspective, recognizing that there are people who can't afford to live and work in our communities. And one way, of course, to take care of that is through trying to do something with the salary schedule. But when you think that you could be saving people, you know, a minimum of $12,000 a year, that's a lot of money for a family to be saving. So I think I think you've been an example of leadership that, well, I was just really proud of it. Very, very, very proud of that. Also very proud of our students who went to CSBA. I think we had 5 different students who attended over the 2 days, and we're already planning for our field trip to San Diego next year. Maybe we can get a few more of our students going. They were awesome. I loved it. So one of the things that we negotiated with AFT was the formation of the district level labor management council. And so last year I did meet routinely with Sergio. This year, continuing those meetings with Monica. So once a month I meet with Monica alone, and then once a month we meet as a labor management council. And if you can believe it, I take notes on the computer. I'm not a very good note taker. And then we take turns editing, and then we send out a joint message to all the staff. And the meetings, I think the meetings have been upbeat, and it's been around problem solving. So here's an issue, you know, what are the underlying issues, what are some ways we can resolve it, and what's the step moving forward? So I think it's been really productive. It's been a pleasure working with Monica and with Mike. So I wanted to share that with you. Also wanted to share with you that on December 14th, we're having our Measure Y Victory Party. I know it doesn't get certified until December 6th. I know there's, but just a reminder, board, that we're having that victory party. Also having the district office holiday party on December 19th from 12 to 1:30. I know it's hard to come back across the bridge or come back from town, but of course you're absolutely welcome if you want to come and share a little meal with us, play a couple of dorky games. We've got a photo booth where we're going to wear ridiculous hats, but it's just a fun time for us all to get together. So we'd love to have you with that. And I think with that, I should probably quiet down for a while. Thank you.
Move on to item 11C, ASB Student Activities Presentation, Oceana High School. Oceana's in the house.
Good evening. I'm Mary Lou Bugay. I'm Oceana's ASB president.
I'm Maggie De Guzman, ASB treasurer.
I'm Cameron Brown, the sophomore president.
So we are here tonight to take a look into Oceana's school year so far, along with the work we've done as ASB. And we've passed around a flyer which basically gives like an overview of our school year so far. So to start off, Maggie and I will be going over student life. So in October, we had our second annual Halloween Fest, which consisted of food, activities, haunted house performances, and this year we even implemented an escape room for students to enjoy. And this event is also open to the public, so we had families from outside of our schools and come and enjoy the event. And we also had our first rally, which was music themed, so each class had a different music genre. And along with that, the radio station 99.7 Now actually took over, so we had some students even go to the station and take over for an hour. Yeah. And following that, we actually had our first casual dance after 3 years, which we called the Get Down. And we as an ASB continue to try and promote inclusivity, so along with having a dance, in the cafeteria we included activities for students who don't usually like to dance the whole time. So we had like video game club provide retro games for students to play. We had board games. Ping pong club also set out their ping pong tables for students to play. And we had a photo booth. And it was also a 90s theme. And we didn't expect to make profit, but surprisingly, $1,000 magically came from that. So yeah,
Key to get you over on our fiscal team.
To go off of that, one of our other fundraisers is the Stussy sale, which is a clothing brand that basically takes over our school. And we have this fundraiser twice a year. We have one in the fall and in the spring. We make $500 for each fundraiser. And our next one should be around April or March. We've also had our leadership training. We've had the summer training. It was a 3-day retreat, and for one of the days we invited all of the Jefferson Union High School District high schools to come in and kind of learn and like train with us. We've also we've invited their ASBs from like a bunch of these different schools, and one of the days we've had 4 different workshops that were hosted by community speakers, such as like different community organizers, sorry, including like our speech pathologist and Mr. Vargas from Westmore. They came in and talked about different and like hosted different workshops on different leadership skills, such as like meaningful organizing and communication and problem solving and like public speaking and also event planning. At the end of August, we've had our freshman elections, and 12 people ran for 9 open positions. And in September, we've had actually our biggest fundraiser, which was Fog Fest, and we made a total of $9,600.
Wow.
It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. So for that breakdown, ASB, or our general student body, has made $3,000 or $3,400. $2,000 went to prom. Each class got $250. Our interim program, which is basically a week where we kind of have different activities that students would like to pick because of our short selections of electives throughout the school year. So it's like this week where they pick activities to do. That account got $3,200. And then the 17 teachers and staff and admin that volunteered for Fog Fest got $200 each. Yeah. So for that event, over 50 students volunteered over 500 hours working either in the parking lot or in the green team of Fog Fest on the street. And yes, we did make a lot of money, but the ultimate goal of volunteering with Fog Fest was just to be more involved and inclusive within our community. We did have a lot of fun seeing a bunch of community members, such as like past alumni or like teachers and staff that came in and parked in our parking lot, or just any of the board members that came in. And we'd like to thank you guys for supporting our parking lot.
The good parking spot.
Yeah. We also have started selling breakfast at schools every Tuesday and Thursday, which was basically one of the main things we took away from our students last year from like surveys from what they wanted for the next school year. And one of the main things that they wanted was more affordable like breakfast served earlier in the day, because we do not, the school does not sell breakfast, so we as ASB provides that for them. Yeah, so we opened it and we sell every Tuesday and Thursdays. And one of the other goals that we had financially for ASB was to become more financially stable. So we implemented like a new structure that uses student-generated like budget forms and purchase order forms that is in compliance with district policies and state laws. So just to make sure that we have like everything. And we also have been getting into the flow of using ASB Works and like the POS system. And it has been working out really well for us. So we like really want to thank you guys for, or thanking the district and the board for like funding it for us. I know those weren't on the flyer, but yeah. And lastly, we have Winterfest, which is coming up next Friday, which is basically like Halloween Fest, but without the haunted house and the escape room. Yeah, we do have food, activities, and performances. It is from 5:30 to 8:30, and we would love to have you guys come and visit.
What day is it again?
Next Friday.
Friday.
Everything else. Okay.
Yeah.
That time of year now.
December 14th, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 5:30 to 8:30. And now I will be handing it off to Cameron, who will be talking about school-wide events.
So to start off in terms of school-wide events, on November 1st we had our open house, which we would consider a success, as we had a team of student speakers present to a full theater of oncoming families of oncoming 8th graders that we would be hoping that would attend Oceana. Additionally, in November, we had our canned food drive, where we achieved our goal of collecting 600 cans that were donated by students, families, and staff members. We donated half of our cans to the Hope Center in Orville to provide relief for the families affected by the California wildfires, and we donated the other half to the Pacifica Resource Center. We also had our collaboration with Dickens Fair, where we allowed the members of Dickens Fair in Cal Palace to use our facilities. And in the end, they donated over $1,000 to Oceana High School. And finally, we are also preparing to have our sock drive, where we will donate socks to St. Martin de Porres Resource Center, where they will distribute the socks to families or those in need. And next, I'll have Marilu talk about athletics.
So lastly, for athletics, our fall sports recently just ended, so our girls tennis and our cross-country team. And a few of our members of our cross-country team actually made CCS. And as Chanel mentioned earlier, our winter sports have started. So currently for basketball, girls basketball is currently at a streak of 2-0. And for soccer, as she mentioned, this year is our first time having a boys soccer team, and they actually had their first game last week. And our girls soccer team is gonna have their first game on December 11th. So yeah, that pretty much consists of everything. Overall, we've had a eventful start to our school year with the new administration and a larger incoming freshman class. And we're happy to report that we're doing well as a school and hope to continue that way. So that concludes our presentation. Do you guys have any questions for us?
We'll open up the floor.
Way to set the bar really high for the other schools.
Okay, well, I'm from Terra Nova, but I love what you're doing. I would definitely go there if I wasn't at Terra Nova. I think how you have other activities at the dances, that's amazing. Because a lot of people are light sensitive or sound sensitive, especially in our SPED students, and they don't normally come to the dance because of that. So I think that's a great way to include people. And I think your overall idea of more inclusive activities is awesome. I think we should implement that at our school. Amanda, you got that. Selling breakfast is also a really good idea because I think we've done a little bit of it in the past, but I think that's a great way to implement it more because a lot of people don't eat breakfast in the morning. Yeah, great work.
Yeah, great work. Always, Oceana, always inclusive. Maggie, did you go to Tobias?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did.
that's how
I know.
So, just I love how you listen to what the students want and you implement it, and how I liked that how you broke down how you distributed the money. It was I could hear thoughtfulness in that. So what kind of breakfast do you sell? I'm curious. It's something that the students want, obviously.
We sell croissants, bagels, bananas. We have like different weekly specials. It used to be like those crepes from Costco. Now we're doing muffins. We also sell like cream cheese and jams, like if they want to have that with their bagel. And it could be like toasted or not. Yeah. We also sell it to like staff too that come early in the morning. So it's just whoever's there like passing by us. Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine that the feel at the school is very, very family oriented. When you're offering breakfast and you're doing all this inclusive stuff. So great job, and I will try to make the Winterfest.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're doing all these things. 90s themed dance. That's cool because I was there in the 90s. So I'm like, keep it alive. 90s will never die. Yeah, it's always impressive things you're doing. I think that student government is one of the reasons that I think motivate a lot of us to get involved with government. And I think engaging students at every angle, whether it's sports, any of the fundraisers you're doing is bringing that, I think, inclusivity to engage everybody at all times, especially at a dance too. Escape room is a good idea. I never think about that. I always think like just take a break outside, right? But sometimes it's not really inclusive to be standing outside and just being on the outside. Winterfest, I'll definitely try to drop by. With VogFest, I'm glad that you're getting the community service experience doing that too, especially because I think like in Pacifica, there are a lot of things that I think a lot of people can get involved in, but Terra Nova and Oceana are in different pockets of Pacifica to a degree, and so things like that, it was good to see students from everywhere. And yeah, so keep on.
Yeah, I just want to echo what other board members have said, and I want to say something that's great for you while you're at Oceana, but also as you move on to the next level and throughout your life is the way that communities kind of invest in the high school, right, or elementary schools. And so these different, you talked about something like the Stussy sale, right, or Fogfest, right? Part of it is location, right? You're in a really good location to be able to provide parking and, other things for Fogfest. But also there's other things that Oceana does that's not gonna be on this report, like Senior X, right? I think people are interested and what's going on at the high school. I talk to the neighbors or the people that live in my complex, and they're interested in what goes into the high school that I live next to, but they don't really know a lot about it. And so constantly giving people opportunities in the community to connect back with the high school or connect back with kids, to reground them on what's going on in their school and how good, things really are. I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for being an ambassador to our community. We really, we talk about, in the beginning of the meeting, we talked about, some housing measure. We talked about a parcel tax. All of these things are connected to students being out there and saying, this is what's going on. This is how valuable our schools are. And so all of these different things, the canned food drive, every time you're getting community involved, it's going to come back and, no, it's not your goal, right? You're obviously trying to help out people in need, but it ends up paying back into your direct education because you've got community members involved and you've got staff that are better supported. And so I just want to say, thank you. Continue that vision and continue being ambassadors of our district. So thank you.
So yeah, to echo what everybody else said, thank you all very much first for coming here tonight and sitting through until it was your time to present. I know that's not always the most fun thing to do. And then secondly, I hope this isn't the last we hear from you, that I hope that you stay in contact with your board, student board member, Janelle, who's here, and that if you have issues that you feel like not having access to breakfast, that's a concern. That's something that the board would want to hear about. So working through Chanel so she can bring those back to us, because it shouldn't be on you to make sure that everyone gets breakfast. So if there are issues that ASB finds that are a school-wide issue, please bring those back to us. You can either communicate directly to us or communicate through your student trustee, because we do want to, you are our customers, and so we want to make sure that we're providing the best customer service that we possibly can, and that you guys are getting on the front lines and are seeing things that we don't see. So making sure that we have that constant feedback both through her to you guys and then the other way around is really important to me. Thank you for serving on ASB. I mean, that's how I started in my political career as well. And so, in high school and serving, and I really was like, I love elections. And it just kept going. And so I do hope that this is the beginning of your career of leadership in our community. And these are the things where I tell people where they're like, I don't know about the next generation. I'm like, I do. I think we're all going to be really fine. So thank you so much for coming out here tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. This is always the best part of the meeting, is to actually hear the student reports. And so, wonderful flyer. Thank you for putting this together to sum up everything that you've been doing so far this year. And I would anticipate when you come back later in the year, it'll be filled with another amazing set of activities. I do want to thank you for the Stussy sale, because my son will go, who attends a different school, will go to the sales. He hasn't missed one now since he started having them. And he spends his own money, so I don't have to pay for it, which is great, and it's supporting you guys, fantastic. So grateful for all of that, and again, great work, so thank you.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
So I'm going to talk personally directly to the three of you. I think most of the people in the room know that when I was in high school, I was a runaway and on my own at a very early age. And when I first moved out, I didn't have anything. All I had is what I carried on my back and in my backpack. And I had glasses that were left behind. At that time, glasses were $40, and I couldn't see a thing in school without glasses. So I had to make choices, and oftentimes I went to school really hungry. And there are students at your school who are really hungry, and it's hard, very hard to focus. You want to do a good job, but when you're hungry, you can't do it. So I would like you to take back a message from me to the rest of your peers that is very noble and helpful work. Continue to do that. I agree with Board Member Salahuddin. If there's a way that we can make sure everyone is fed in the morning, I mean, that would be a goal someday. But just personally for me, I just want to say thank you for that, for the voices that you're not, because the kids are not going to come and tell you they're hungry. I didn't want to be different from everyone else. It was a secret. But thank you for doing that work.
Anyone else? Ms. Lahana, did you want to add anything? Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
have homework, so don't feel like you have to stay. You can if you want.
And we are also extremely thankful for your sponsor because we know that you can't have ASB class without
Yes,
having your
Miss
actual
Ava.
teachers.
And there is only one place where I will park for Fog Fest.
That's right.
That's right.
All right, item 12, consent agenda.
Move that we approve consent.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right. Mr. Lethko, my final time I will ask you this question. Are there any blue cards for this meeting for public comment number 13?
There are no blue cards at this time.
All right. I think you did that very well, too. Very authoritatively.
There are no blue cards at this time, Mr. President.
All right, item 14A, Education Services Math Assignment Analysis Report. Ms. Baca.
Good evening, President Lee. Good evening, members of the board. Before I start, I just want to give a shout out to Miss Carey and the math teachers at Terra Nova High School who graciously offered their time and their willingness to participate in this math analysis assignment because it's not an easy task. So EdTrust claims that students can do no better than the assignments they are given. Research shows that classroom assignments strongly reflect the expectations that educators hold for their learners, providing a daily lens of students' interaction with the curriculum. Last school year, we received inquiries from the community about the rigor of the math courses at Terra Nova High School. And in response to the inquiries on the Terra Nova's math courses, we wanted to do a deep dive on the math program. We also wanted to look at some of the possible root causes to the low math test scores, the grade distribution, and not having enough students to meet the prerequisite skills for the AP Calculus class. And we also wanted to see the alignment of our math courses with the Common Core instructional shifts. So this study happened around the same time as the equity audit work with EdTrust West, and this work is done by EdTrust National. And we thought that it would be a good idea to run this analysis in parallel to EdTrust West study because we also want to address the equity issue in our math departments. And we're also hoping to be able to use this data to drive and design our scope and sequence for math courses. So what I'm going to go over is what was analyzed, how did the assignment score on the individual analysis indicators, and what are the implications for teacher practices. And I just want to let you know that this report is pretty comprehensive, so I'm just going to highlight a couple of things from each of the slides. So to give you a context, assignments were collected during the last week of March for 2 straight weeks. The process was that Ms. Carey had chosen a collection manager, and this collection manager participated in a virtual training to learn about the collection processes and tools. And this collection manager, who was a teacher, one of the math teachers, collected the assignment and submitted all the assignments electronically through EdTrust West's site. And I just want to say that EdTrust National said that this had been the easiest and most organized assignment collection they've ever done. So thank you to Terra Nova staff. So these assignments were double scored. So 2 people scored the assignments. And the staff that scored them includes math teachers, curriculum directors, and math specialists. And any identifying information specific to a teacher was redacted prior to the submission so that it doesn't point necessarily to just one teacher. And we wanted to have the teachers remain anonymous. So who participated? There were a total of 5 teachers. And the 5 teachers taught Math Course 1, Math Course 2, and Bridge 2. So 3 of those teachers taught Math Course 1, 3 of them taught Math Course 2, and 2 taught Bridge 2, and a combination of all of that. The assignments that they submitted were the assignments that were completed independently or with a group of peers over the 2-week period. So that includes all of the warm-ups, or the do nows, the warm up, the exit tickets. So anything that they done homework wise and then in class also, but had to be done independently. So the range of assignments from each of the teacher is some teachers had 8 assignments all the way up to 37 assignments. And just keep in mind that some of those teachers could be teaching multiple classes at multiple levels. And the average assignment for the teacher is 19. So the assignment identification, this is by math courses. There were 153 assignments collected, and 76% of, or sorry, 50% or 76 of those assignments came from math course 1, 33% came from math course 2, and 17% from bridge 2. They broke it down by the type of assignments, whether it was teacher created or an assignment from the textbook. So the teacher created are mostly, they said these were the do nows and the exit tickets. And they also broke it down by the different course level, math course 1, course 2, and course and bridge. As you can see for bridge 2, that's the highest percentage where most of the assignments came from the textbook. They also broke it down by length, and they broke it down by 15 minutes or less, and that's about 33% of the assignments, and 67% if it took 1 to 2 class periods. And they also broke it down by whether the assignment was a text from the textbook or teacher created. And
So when you say assignments by length, is that?
So if it took about 15 minutes to complete.
Or to complete.
To complete. Yeah. This is the assignment by lengths for each of the courses. So math course 1, 29 of the assignments were about 15 minutes or less, and 47 of the assignments took 1 to 2 class periods. There's the math course 2 results, 16 and 35, and bridge 2 is 5 and 21. So EdTrust National developed a set of analysis indicators that is broken down by alignment, cognitive challenge, aspect of rigor, communicating mathematical understanding, motivation, engagement, and scaffolding. The first one is alignment, and alignment means whether the assignment met the whole entire standard or parts of the standards. So some standards are clusters of standards, and if they just even met that part of the standard, they qualified it as a yes, they met, that standard is, or sorry, the assignment is aligned. They also looked at whether the assignment incorporated the standards of mathematical practices. There are 8 of them, and they wanted to see if the assignment clearly articulated the task. So based on the analysis indicator, the first one, whether it was aligned to the standards, they put as recalculating because most of them were actually were aligned to the standard, but it was a cluster of the standard, and they couldn't really tell whether the whole entire standards were met within that 2-week period. But they're saying that is about 90% or so that our assignments are aligned to the standards. And that 98% is that clearly articulates the task. They also look at the mathematical practice in assignments. As you can see, attending to precision is where most of the assignments fall, and looking for and expressing regularity and repeated reasoning is the lowest percentage for the mathematical practice.
Sorry, I can go back. I know you're not going to go through all of them, but attending to precision makes sense to me in math, right? Like when we're talking about this. I'm not familiar with the 1% one that you just highlighted.
So the look for the precision.
No, not the precision. The look for and express regularity.
I don't know, Dr. Delory, do you know much about that mathematical practice?
Well, those are the list of practices. So they were looking for evidence to what extent any of those practices were evident in the assignments, whether it was a warm-up or a homework assignment. I think the point here is we focus a lot on correct answers. And there's, I mean, this doesn't add up to 100, right? I mean, you would like to see some of those numbers a little more improved. Like I would like to see a little more evidence that we're trying to get students to really grapple and stick with and persevere on rigorous work. That would be something. Reasoning, as a math teacher, so.
Well, that's what, like, I'm looking in, I don't want to go too far in the weeds, but like critiquing others' reasoning or viable arguments for 55% of assignments to have some of that, to me, is like really high, like pretty good, right? Like, and so obviously I was just trying to make sense of the bottom one is the one I didn't understand, but you can keep going.
The constructing the viable, the textbook, every homework assignment has a series of, like, look at the way the student did the problem, it's not correct, what's wrong with it? So it automatically, all the homework assignments are going to ratchet up in that area.
We also look at the cognitive challenge. So what is the cognitive demand required by the assignment? And this is based on the depth of knowledge. And so we looked at recall and reproduction, basic skills and application, basic application of skills and concepts, strategic thinking, and extended thinking. As you can see, most of the assignments fall under recall and reproduction and basic application of skills and concepts. ETRUST National is saying that there are very few assignments that they've seen nationwide where, the extended thinking is very high. However, they expect that the strategic thinking would be a little more proportional than the other two. So there's nothing wrong with recall and reproduction and basic application of skills and concepts, but we need to be really mindful and make sure that we are, our assignments are a little more cognitively demanding. And again, 9% is about the national average for strategic thinking.
What's the average for extended?
I want to say about 2%.
Yeah, it's really low.
Really low. So this is the same graph, but on a pie chart. But what they had broken down is the level of cognitive challenge by the textbook and the teacher created. As you can see, the textbook, there's 51, which is about 40% recall and reproduction, and about 60 basic application. And the teacher created assignments, there's more or higher percentage in the recall and reproduction. This is broken down by the math courses, Math Course 1, Course 2, and Bridge 2. And to me, it looks like, for our Bridge 2 class, which is deemed as our remedial class, has the most recall and reproduction. They also looked at aspects of rigor. Which aspects of rigor does the assignment address, and does this assignment provide multiple representations of mathematical concepts and or equations? So they looked at the rigor in the areas of conceptual understanding, procedural skills and fluency, and application. So based on this, most of our assignments are focused on procedural skills and fluency. And do the assignments provide multiple representations of mathematical concepts? Only 27% of them did. This is about communicating mathematical understanding, and they broke it down into writing and discussion, and they also brought in the Eld Standards, which are the last 3 sentences at the bottom. So the analysis indicators, does the assignment require students to communicate their understanding using the language of mathematics? 62% of the assignments met that. And do the assignments use math terminology and vocabulary? And 90% of them do. So this is, again, is the writing demands. About 51% of the assignment, or sorry, 61% of the assignment have about short phrases or 2-sentence writing demands. 39% of them, there's no writing or communication. And there's 0% where students have to write 1 or more paragraphs about the assignments.
What does no writing or communication look like?
So if you just say, you know, solve y equals, you know.
So numbers only, no.
Yep, no explanation on how they derive the problem. So again, this is the writing demands per the math courses and the writing demands for the teacher created and then the textbook. This graph shows instead of writing, they talk about having students talk about how they derive the problem, how they solve the problem. So 97% of the assignment shows that discussion is not incorporated. 2% includes cues and moments for informal or brief discussion, and 1% includes cues, significant time for formal and or extended discussion. And then within that discussion, they talked about when they discussed it, did they talk about the purpose of the discussion and the assignments? And because from this graph, 97% of them, you know, said no evidence. So no evidence of the purpose of the assignment carries over on this slide. And then when they did talk about it, 1% talks about clarifying the task, and about 1% aligns with the speaking and listening standards. This table right here shows actually the Eld Standards. Collaborative is about exchanging information and ideas with others through oral collaborative discussion, and that's 3%. Interpretive is listening actively to spoken English and range of context at 0%. However, there's the higher percentage in productive mode where they express information and ideas in formal oral presentations, some writing to describe what they're trying to do. They also looked at motivation and engagement. So that means, do the students have a choice in the assignment in one of the following areas, whether it's content, product, process, mathematical tool, and rigor is maintained across all options. They also looked at whether the task is relevant and whether it focuses on real-world materials, and it gives students to make connections to their lives. So in this area, both areas, there was 0% where motivation and engagement is evident. And the last part is scaffolding. So what is the amount of teacher supports or scaffolds in this assignment? What are the types of scaffolds? And does it create multiple differentiated pathways to different types of learners? 88%. So that's providing teacher support, like the gradual release of responsibility, where we do I do as a teacher, do the problem first, and then we do it together, and then you do together, and then independently. So again, the amount of support, no scaffolding. It's basically just saying, you know, here is the work, do it independently. 88% did not have any scaffolds, 7% had minimal scaffold, and 5% had heavy scaffolding in this assignment.
That's in all courses.
This is a combination of all of the courses. And again, the type of scaffolding and what types of scaffold, you know, no scaffolding for 88%.
So there's not a lot of scaffolding for these assignments, and they're not really discussing their assignments, like no evidence of like what they're discussing. How are they like understanding?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. A lot of it's showing like if it's on standard, but is this testing at all whether students are actually grasping the concepts? Yeah.
No.
Because a lot of this data is pointing towards students not understanding it. If you just throw a book at them, how are they supposed to? And that's what
We're trying to, we know with this study, we're trying to create a plan based on not just this, but multiple ways that I'll talk about towards the end. Okay. Again, the assignment created different instructional pathways. As you know, there are different type of learners in the classroom. Does the assignment provide different multiple ways in addressing different learners, and 1% of them meets that. So what are the implications for teacher practice? So again, most of the assignments were aligned. Over 95% of the assignments were on the recall and reproduction or basic application level. And that math course too had significantly more assignments at the basic application level. The aspects of rigor, most of the assignments relied heavily on procedural and fluency skills instead of conceptual understanding and application. For communication, over 60% of assignments provided students with an opportunity to communicate their understanding. However, most of these assignments only had a single question that asked students to explain or justify their thinking, and that there were no assignments that extended the writing beyond 1 to 2 sentences. No assignments were found to provide students with a choice or make the content relevant. And again, most of the assignments were discrete tasks without evidence of scaffolding. So some of the things that we need to consider moving forward, and again, these are the recommendations by EdTrust National, but I just want to particularly highlight the first bullet, which is, what level of cognitive demand are we asking of our students in mathematics? Are we pushing students, particularly low-income students and students of color, to think strategically in math, when and how frequently? So that is one thing that we can really look at, especially the teacher-created assignments that we have. How can we make it a little more challenging, cognitively demanding? And I also want to point out that this presentation was presented to the Terra Nova Math Department already, and they are willing and open to work to make changes with our math courses. And we've already begun working our scope and sequence with a few of our teachers. And over last Saturday, we spent about 5 hours here working on the scope and sequence, and I essentially started out with this math analysis findings, and they're all from different schools. And we wanted to make sure that as we develop our scope and sequence, we ask ourselves, does our scope and sequence consider some of these aspects and analysis indicators? And so we didn't get as far as I wanted to, but the level of discussion and depth on how to make sure that the lesson is very engaging and that it's rigorous, and just that back and forth dialogue on how we make sure that all of our students learn was very, very rich. The teachers were so happy and appreciative of the time to even have that dialogue about what do we really need to do to ensure that our students understand math. I also want to point out that in addition to this, Dr. Deloria, Dean Ballard from Core Learn, and I did a walkthrough visit at the Terra Nova math classrooms and also the Jefferson classrooms. And a lot of what this study had mentioned is reflective of what we had observed in the classrooms. And so our plan is to continue to collect more data on what we need to do. So for instance, I am going to send out a self-reflection survey for our teachers on asking them where they think their strengths are, some of the areas that they may need professional development in, and use all of that information to create a math improvement plan that includes PD for our math district-wide. Okay. And that's about it.
No for questions and comments.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear from the students.
I was wondering how you decided like what courses you were studying. Like there was no stabs or trigger calc. It was just like the bridge.
So we wanted to make sure we address, the math course 1, everybody takes math course 1 and course 2, and, math will take course 3. So we wanted to start with that first and see where we are, if our students are meeting that, the basic foundations that they need for higher level classes. Also, because of this study, we got a copy of the math assignment analysis guide that we can actually use for all of our math assignments. So what the teachers wanted to do on Saturday was actually to use this rubric and do their own analysis of their own assignments. Because after seeing this, they started reflecting and thinking like, wait a second, what kind of assignments am I giving my students? Are they learning anything? So they're very open and they really want to do, their own analysis. And we could also apply this for other school sites too, if we need to.
That's good to hear. But I will say for now, especially for me and Amanda, because we're at Terra Nova, like you see it in the classrooms, but seeing it in these numbers is really upsetting. These suck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also to see that, because last year I was in Trig, so I wasn't in any of these classes that were studied, but to see that it's like widespread among that, shows that there's a really big problem. And I think that there's a lot of like memorizing formulas and how to do things, but you don't necessarily understand why you're doing it or how it relates to the concept or like the rest of your life. So I think there's a big disconnect between the students and the material, and also between teachers and students. And it sounds good that they're like really motivated to make some changes, but I would like to see follow-up, maybe like next year. Well, I'll be gone by then, but that teachers are actually implementing these in their classrooms, because it'd be upsetting if we went through all this and there's no change.
So Dr. Delore and I made a promise that, the focus will be math, and it'll be math improvement for, years and years. And it's going to take, a really long time to get us to where we want to be. But, we've begun the process. We have data, and we can only move up.
So I had a few questions. First, the standards of mathematical practice. Has that ever been introduced to staff? Like, your work is someday going to be evaluated by these standards?
So there was a Common Core PD that happened, I want to say, back in 2013-14, but I don't think it was specifically addressed, like, towards math. Mm-hmm. And I don't recall having, like, a district-wide PD in math with these standards and practices.
Okay.
And so one of the ideas that we really, even training for the textbook. So the teachers received a very brief overview last year before school started in the summer. It's about 1.5 hour training, and not all teachers were able to attend. And so what we would like to do is provide training to all of the staff this year on even how to, use the resources in the textbook. How do you teach a certain concept that is a little more engaging when it comes to this type of problems? So we need PD math.
And so, again, like when I see relies heavy on the textbook, I'm thinking there's a reason why they're relying heavily on the textbook, and do they have the training to not rely heavily on the textbook? And so, I know it took forever to get the textbook. Like, it took a really long time to get the textbook. And then once we got it, we just kind of went with it. So, what was the level of training, like you said, on the use of the use of the textbook, and then also the embracing of this particular pathway versus traditional. And so, I'm just thinking, do we need to have like a restart on integrated math a little bit? Because I feel like we never really did the rigorous professional development that we needed to do because we didn't have the textbook. And then when we had the textbook, we were already like the plane was already in the air, you know what I mean? So, so what does that entail? And when you say like you had math teachers and that you discussed this with math teachers, what does that mean? Like how many teachers, was it all the math teachers or was it?
So the scope and sequence, the ones that could only attend on Saturday, there were only 3 of them. However, we're gonna have a follow-up on the 12th after school. So finding a time for everybody to meet. So the after school one, there will be about 7 of them working on the scope and sequence. And what they really do not want, this group are some of our strongest math teachers, and what they don't want is for a new teacher to just say, I'm gonna start with page 1 and then page 2 and page 3. So they're being really thoughtful and methodical on how to make sure that we're looking at the task and the skills that students need to learn. And also their objective was the teacher needs to point out that this is what the students need to learn in order for them to be able to fully demonstrate that they've mastered the skill. So I really, again, I appreciate that deep conversation and really thinking deeply what it means to learn math, and it's not just flipping through textbooks.
Right.
They're searching for, all of these performance tasks that were creative, that is more engaging. They're even thinking of, perhaps like in science where they start with a phenomena, like, think of like a really exciting math problem where students get excited about math. That's what they want to bring back to math, is that excitement.
And then, so that was gonna be my next question, was the connection to our science teachers, because math is a barrier to higher science for a lot of students because they can't handle the math in the science classrooms. So, like, since we're starting this kind of reevaluation of our math program, also looking into, I feel like there's a disconnect between those two groups on, are we teaching the math that's going to also allow the students to be successful in science? Is there a connection and a bridge to those two, between those two groups as well? And is it possible, like, first I would just like us, to get a handle on, like, what do we need in terms of professional development? And I think that's going to come out of the math plan. Like, what do we need in terms of professional development of all our teachers, and what is that going to cost, and can we afford to do it? Because we need to have, I don't want to judge our teachers on something that we never really trained them to do in the first place. And then secondly, if we're going to do that, if we can do that in a way that's thoughtful so that all the pieces connect, and that we don't do something and then after the fact we hear what the science was like, well, that doesn't fit with the, you know what I mean? So if we could have multiple players in the room. And then the other thing is, I know there needs to be writing in science, but that always scares me, because is it being done in a way that we don't, like, somebody who's not a reader and a writer but loves math now has that avenue kind of cut off a little bit because we're requiring so much reading and writing and math. So,
well, that's where I think constructing meaning has helped a lot, because it provided the language, not necessarily for the content, but how to compare things, how to describe, and even the teachers talked about they have their their global objectives, but they're going to have to create their daily objectives, and what they want to see is to make sure that there is a language function, like the language on how do we compare, how do we do this, and that's where I think constructing meaning will help, because there are constructing meaning teachers that are math teachers are actually doing a lot more writing in their classroom.
Um,
And as far as the PD and the money, I know that we received some funds from the state of California. I believe it was the low performing, do you remember?
Yes, low performing student block grant, $197,000.
I mean, I'll take the money. I wish they could change the title, but
We're gonna use it for math. We need
Well,
but
like almost all of that money will go into math, PD and improvement plan.
okay, but is that enough? And in terms of like we're developing our LCAP and everything, and we're determining the budget, so it'd be good to have an understanding like what the
Christmas Eve, we're getting together and we're gonna
Okay.
write this plan, right?
Got it. Okay.
Love it.
And then, I love Education Trust West, but at the same time, I think there is still, like, I just want to make sure that this is not the only guiding star, and that we are, you know what I mean? And so, because I feel like we hop into a lot of, not we in particular, education as a whole hops into a lot of consultants' wagons where their theories haven't really been proven yet. Like, is this really gonna, if we make these changes, is it actually gonna lead to successful outcomes? And so I just wanna make sure that we are moving and doing things that, have some sort of successes in other areas, you know what I mean? Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
I just have like some quick comments before I have to go. I think that for science and math, I don't really see a connection personally, because even if there's some math and like chemistry, the teacher can usually go over it pretty quickly, and then I think most students will understand it. And then adding on to the student communication in math, something that my teacher does that I think is helpful is sometimes we'll have our Chromebooks with the graphing website, and we'll be in groups, and then sometimes it's better for the students to explain to each other, so it's not a teacher language. And then we did a project about parabolas in real life, so we had to find something of a parabola in real life, and that I think that helped a lot of people understand why they do the things that they do. And then for scaffolding, we'll have warm-ups where he just introduces a concept, and then he'll go over a little bit of it, and then every class period next we'll add a little on to what happened before, and that really connects the bigger concepts to the previous ones. And I think that's really helpful, because my last math teacher didn't really connect a lot of things. It was just memorization for me, but now I can actually see how things work. Yeah.
I just want to echo to what Chanel is saying, because one of our science teachers actually questioned, will our students be ready for chemistry? And one of the other science teachers replied, with NGSS, you don't rely as much with, the rote mathematical piece that is needed to understand the concept.
Okay.
What would you consider to be a short-term win? I mean, if we're doing this work and we were to just sort of reevaluate the data a year from now, what would we consider a win?
Right now, a win is probably, for me, just the perception of math in general, that we're moving in a positive direction. Seeing the light in our teachers' eyes and getting them excited in creating the scope and sequence was just really rewarding. And I think, it starts with, if our teachers really love and own the work that we are doing, then we're gonna make huge strides. And I think it starts with that. And it will, transfer to our students as well. Just getting them excited will get our students excited.
Great. Anyone else? Still myself.
Is it volunteer? Did you do the volunteering stuff this time, or?
They volunteered, but we pay them for their time.
Just because I'm thinking that most people that are volunteering are ones who are already kind of into this. So if there's a way that we could, I don't know if legally you can make it mandatory, but something to get more, because the teachers who think they know what they're doing and really need help aren't going to come to it.
So once the scope and sequence is done, there will be training that all the teachers, And that, again, that little spark of success, we're hoping to, move the other teachers.
What does she teach?
She's elementary school.
Before we move on, I just wanted to point out one thing, and no, it's not really my topic, but we did a similar study to this in Half Moon Bay High when I was a math teacher there 15 years ago. So it was a long time ago, and the standards were totally different. But one thing that jumped out at me, that was really, really positive, is the connection to standards. The 98% of the assignments being connected to standards is phenomenal. We were at 70% 15 years ago in Half Moon Bay in the old standards. Because so many teachers, at least at our school, felt like they needed to rehash and redo and do a lot of front loading before they felt like they could talk about the actual standards. So they would, review percentages before they went into the ratios they were supposed to be actually teaching. And so I just thought that was a great bright spot. So.
Yeah, and I just also want to, if we really think about this, first of all, I want to say the math teachers at Terra Nova and all of our high schools, we have to think about them. It's easy to slip from a consultant's report into like a little bit of teacher deficit-based language. These are like really rational and like professional who are making decisions basically as reflective of like what we have asked them to do, right? If we have 98% of teachers using, textbook or standards, like that's basically they're doing their job, right? Like in terms of, so I just want to like hesitate a little bit, and then also to commend them. Like personally, I can't imagine Ed Trust coming into my classroom and collecting 2 weeks of assignments and then receiving having this public report on how my class. So the level of vulnerability that is involved in this, yes, and humiliation to some point. And just as a quick gut check for this, I don't talk a lot about this, but I'm lucky to be part of a strong math program that has the highest, test scores and really strong in all of Oakland. And we are not close to a lot of these things that we're aspiring to in here. So it's not like we're way behind everybody else. I'm part of a strong program who are constantly doing performance tasks, and we are not, so I would say this is really aspirational, but I just want to just check us when we say we're so far behind. We have work room to grow, but I would say everybody's trying to get performance tasks. They're I enrolled in a Stanford class just to get performance tasks. Because I had this online class where they had a list of performance tasks, and I'm trying to get my kids ready for the SBAC. They're hard to find and they're hard to make, and so. When it comes to this stuff, it's tough to get someone like Dan Myers to do a PD, and get everyone excited about math. But I just want to say where we're at is people are following the textbook and standards. That's pretty good. I agree, but we want to get people excited. And I just want to say wow, to have someone come in and to publish this report. I'm grateful. It sounds like it went positive. I wouldn't have gone super positive at my school if they would have done the report. But I'm grateful it went positive, and just thinking about moving forward, ideally we would want them to be heroes that are presenting at conferences, or because they're able to make so much of this stuff applicable. My questions are similar to Andy's questions, which is kind of what are short-term goals, and then how can we. Do we have any models we can follow of insourcing PD? Because I feel with these questions, I feel if people just sat around and we pay them to talk about what is rigor, and what assignments reflect rigor, I feel there would be so much progress made with just these professionals in the room. Is kind of my 2 follow-up questions.
Well, that's one of the things that we need to focus on, is really defining what this means in the classroom. And not just with the teachers, but also with our administrators, so that when they visit the classrooms, they see this. As far as the PD, right now we are still exploring on exactly what do we need, what is that, low-hanging fruit to just advance us even a little forward with this. So we are, still in the exploratory phase. And again, I'm trying to collect as much information I can from all of our teachers because I don't want to make a unanimous decision saying we're going to do this PD. I want to make sure that there is a buy-in and that there's a clear communication on how we're going to implement this because this is huge for our district.
Braxton just said that whole lot better than what I was trying to say in terms of like the consultants and using really trying to embrace what our teachers bring to the table as much as possible. And I'm glad that they're excited. The core group that you're using now, and so I'm hoping that we can branch that out into the entire math departments in all our schools. And that I completely agree that I don't want this to be a morale killer. I want, I'm hoping that this is seen as like, no one, like San Mateo County, none of us are doing this right? Everybody has room for improvement. Every school in San Mateo County is struggling with math right now and the math adoption. And so this is just a path to try to help them to perform better. And I'm really hoping that there's also like, what else can we do to help them? What else do we need to do as a board to help put them on the path where they feel like they have a stake in the game and that they can be successful, so that it's more two-way communication moving forward. So I'm glad that it started this way and that I hope it continues on this path, that we can be open and honest about where we need to improve without it blaming anybody. We all have a stake in this and we just want to get better. So yeah, so when you had said, oh, this had already been given to the Terra Nova staff, I was like, ooh, because it doesn't really read well, but I'm glad that everybody had a good outcome out of it.
One of the, better math teachers.
Yeah. You missed that part.
And so when we did a walkthrough, we had to make sure that we visited Dr. Deloria's math classroom. And I didn't even tell the person I was visiting with that, that's Dr. Deloria. And sure enough, he said that one of the better classrooms is Dr. Deloria's classroom because the level of motivation and engagement that she creates in her classroom is phenomenal.
I
think you have a couple
wow.
other things on
Bring
your
that back.
out of the video.
There was a quote that one of my colleagues actually had written in an email about a difficult situation we've got at work, and he was referencing the Stockdale paradox where he said, we need to confront the reality of the situation while maintaining an unyielding commitment to and a belief in a great outcome. And I think that's exactly what this is. I mean, it speaks to us as a whole as a district, but specific to this situation, I mean, the fact that the teachers are confronting this reality with the belief that they will come to a great outcome, I think that's really, really commendable. And that vulnerability and being honest and open about that. So the TN math department certainly deserves a lot of kudos for their honesty and vulnerability in this situation.
Please thank them for it. Yes, thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, not a question, but even just a comment. Having taught math for a while and even special ed level, that creating, I think, scaffolding across different subjects, the bridge course as well, and including students at that rate, especially introductory courses, because the advanced courses, my experience in life has been that math teachers are great when they're teaching what they know, but teaching, like how to teach it to every student is the struggle sometimes. And I know that from talking with my students who appreciated the different ways in which I try to communicate it. Not having had a strict math background helped me in some ways because I thought that maybe my approach was a little bit different. And so the constructing meaning PD, I think that there was a lot of interdisciplinary groundwork, and I'm sure that Terra Nova and all our schools were getting there. But I know about 5 years ago when we were teaching math at other schools in the county, math is the hardest area to create common core bridges because integrating writing and literacy into math is something we never did when we were young. It was just rote learning, stick to numbers, procedural. So the cognitive part and everything I think people are mentioning here, under a microscope, I think many, if not all math departments will be struggling in many of those areas. Though I will say, to kind of echo some of the concerns that I've seen from my students too, is if you don't make math relevant, the students who are struggling with it are going to continue to struggle, because that is why. it is dry. Math is not the easiest subject to communicate in an effective way. So I'm proud that our department has come forward to at least allow this evaluation. And I think that evaluations of teachers is always a sensitive subject, but like it's something that needs to be heard. Otherwise, we never change. So yeah, that said, I hope we continue with that. And, yeah, thank you for presenting.
Thank you
All
for
right,
working
yep.
on this. I have a freshman who's in math too, and she got A+ in math throughout middle school. And she got into math too. I was nervous. She had a brand new teacher, and she said she was lost. I don't understand what she's talking about. She's not explaining it well. But my daughter would remember how her middle school teacher taught it, and then she started to understand it. Now, I check in with her. How's it going? Oh, it's great. And but I'm not asking her the specifics. What is different now? I mean, how is your teacher teaching? Because she and her best friend are in the same class together, and they love their teacher. They're doing well. But what was the difference between the start of school, I'm lost, to now, oh, it's great? So that's something I need to ask her. And I'm really glad we're making this a priority, and that our staff, we really have to communicate really well. And like you were saying, you know, it would be good to have some new teachers in there, you know, because they're the ones who have to, have a say in how it's being taught. Maybe they'll be more invested to be here for the long haul, you know. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Baca.
Can I talk for a minute?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to talk about everything I wrote down. I wanted to connect back to something that Braxton said. So all the time we're talking to our teachers about you need to meet the students where they are and bring them forward. And that's where Ms. Baca and I are. We're going to meet the teachers where they are and then move them forward. And as much as possible, put those feedback structures in place so we can find out where would they like to go. I had to tell you that they're working really hard. We didn't go into a single classroom where a teacher was sitting down. There were no videos being shown. Everyone's working really, really hard. And they're not happy with the data either. It's tough, and they do want to improve. In terms of the writing and the speaking, I learned a long time ago that in every subject, that it's that metacognitive activity of talking about what you're learning, writing about it's really important. So, sorry, I had to give you a story. So tomorrow my students are taking a test on parabolas. It's the parabola chapter, right, Monica? And there's 3 different forms that you can write your parabolas in. And so there's an activity that we did in class a couple days ago. They had to partner up. One had a card for parabolic form, another had one for intercept form, another for standard form. And they had to meet and talk to each other about the pros and cons, because there's no one better than the other. But they had to talk about, the reason I like parabolic form is, so they had a little stamp, blah, 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 blah. And I go, the problem with parabolic form is, blah, 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 blah. Then they had to listen to their part, and then they had to exchange cards, and now they had to go back to another person with a different card and do the same kind of thing. So now what's happening is they're saying out loud, they're hearing from other people, and now when they take the test tomorrow and they look at a problem, they say parabolic, oh, this is in parabolic form. Am I happy that it's in parabolic form? I don't know, let me think. So there are ways, they're not writing essays, but they can certainly write a paragraph on how to look at a problem and know how to approach it. And that's the kind of writing we're talking about, right? It's not essay writing. So I definitely think it's possible. I'm glad that we have some money to do it, because I think it'll be helpful to bring them, I agree, bringing them together to say, how can we get to those level 3 and 4 type assignments? So there's a reason why our students aren't scoring at the 3 and 4 level, and you saw it. They're working down at the basic recall level, you know, and the procedure level. We've got to get them up to those types of questions. So I know we can do it, but it's a lot of work. Teaching well requires a lot of prep time, And if you can do it collaboratively, it makes it a little bit easier. But I think we can do it. But it's going to take a process. We're asking people to change their behavior, and that's the most difficult change of all. So good job to Karina and her team, and I love my math team over at Terra Nova. We're buds already.
All right, if nothing else, we'll move on to item 15, the various action items. Item 15A1, first interim report, 2018-19 budget. Ms. Van Raphorst.
It's all for Braxton. You're not going home, Braxton. All right, so I know that you've had a chance to already look at this, so I won't go through it in great detail. But as you're aware, we have to submit 2 interim financial reports for the county to review and submit to the state that show that we can meet our financial obligations for the current year and 2 subsequent years. And so that's what this report shows, is that we do have a positive certification. We can meet our financial obligations. So the first interim is more accurate than the budget was when we adopted it in June. And the second interim will be even more accurate. The budget is developed in April or May based on the information that we have at that time. At that time, we were looking at $344 per ADA in one-time money, and it actually is only coming in at $184 per ADA. And some of those other assumptions that we have been relying on, the COLA and the LCFF gap funding or the base funding, all of those are things we're going to be relying less on as we move further into basic aid status. So we had projected that taxes would come in about 6% higher than last year, and the preliminary information we're getting from the assessor's office shows that it's closer to 10.1%. This is still preliminary information. The one thing with taxes is we don't actually get the final number until after the fiscal year is over. So this is we're moving into a different type of budgeting. We had projected 6% and then 4% for 1920 and 4% for 2021. So I've adjusted those up slightly higher to 5.5% and 5%. But we still want to be cautious, because after the last time that we had over 10% increase, we went to the following year and only had 1% increase. So we just want to be cautious. But these projections that I'm using, the 5.5 and the 5 for the out years, are ones that I've consulted with the County Office of Ed, and we've looked at the assessor's office information together to make sure that those are reasonable. So even with the conservative projections, unless the state does something dramatically different with base funding, we will continue to be community funded or basic aid. Those are synonymous. As the years go on, we go further and further into basic aid status. So, and I think that will happen with more and more districts. If the base funding doesn't increase, if it only goes up by COLA each year, then this is going to happen to more and more districts. So with us moving into basic aid more solidly, well, last year we were 7% into basic aid, and this year we're only 3% in. But what we see is now that the trend is putting us more solidly into basic aid. So I thought it would be important for us to really just kind of discuss what the pitfalls of basic aid are. I mean, it's a great thing because we have more revenue. I mean, that's more is more. More is better. But we do have to be really cautious and careful about that. There's more uncertainty when you're in basic aid status because the property tax revenue is uncertain. It's subject to dramatic changes based on the economy, and so we have to be vigilant. We also have to be careful with our long-term planning so that we can adapt when taxes don't come in as high as we expect. And then I already spoke to, the delayed revenue information. We get projections. The first projection comes in August, so when I'm doing the April and May planning for the following year, I'm working on old assumptions. We don't get the first projection for the following year until August, after our budget already has to be adopted. So we will be working from less certain information than we have in the past. enrollment is no longer part of the equation in a basic aid district. We get the same amount of money regardless of how many students we have. And so any enrollment growth would have to be, taken up. The impact of that would have to be taken up within our set amount of money. So we might want to, as we move into more solid basic aid funding, if the state doesn't start making changes, we might want to relook at our enrollment policies and interdistrict transfer policies. And then other considerations are that, the increases in maintenance costs, STRS and PERS, special education, et cetera, all of that has to be accounted for within the set amount of money. And so we'll just need to be careful in our monitoring. So before I go on to the multi-year projection, this doesn't, there we go. So we'll look at this year's budget, the difference between the adopted budget and the first interim. The revenue is coming in higher, primarily because of the higher projection in the property taxes. And also the local revenue includes the new, oh no, that's not yet. Sorry, that's on the multi-year projection. And we get some additional money for CTE. And then in the expenditures, the primary difference between our adopted and our first interim is due to carryover, money that wasn't spent last year that we had thought we would spend. Primarily that's in CTE and lottery. The lottery we're saving for our adoptions. We have some big adoptions coming up. And then the CTE funds, I think part of why we didn't spend as much as we thought last year was because we didn't have our director, and we need to work on spending that. So the CTE money must be spent by June 30th, or else we won't get it. So we're working on that, right, Kareen? Okay.
Just really quick,
Yeah.
can you speak a little bit more to the adoptions? I'm not.
Textbook adoptions?
Oh, textbook
adoptions?
Yeah.
Sorry, so textbook adoptions that we need to.
So for instance, this year we will be purchasing biology and GSS biology textbooks. And then the following year we'll be purchasing for chemistry and physics. We also need to do an adoption for the social sciences and world language.
So we've been setting aside funds, and every year I put it into the materials budget thinking that we're going to do the adoption, and then every year it turns out, well, we didn't get to it yet because of there isn't available textbooks, primarily is that, right, but they haven't made them available yet. And so we're hoping or planning that will be spent, or at least some of that will be spent this year.
Anytime I have additional information about what happens to the lottery money, it's always good to. Common question.
Yeah.
Not much you can do with the roll of nickels.
I know. Where's that lottery money?
All that lottery money.
So the unallocated balance has gone up from what we projected of 3.4 million up to 4.7 million. And so we'll go back up to how that breakdown of our unallocated money is. Here it is. So the ending fund balance it consists of our revolving cash, which is almost nothing, but the 3% required reserve for economic uncertainty, and then our unallocated amount together makes about a 10.9% reserve. And when you add in our special reserve for Fund 17, which we use to cover retirees' cost on a pay-as-you-go basis, then we're up to about a 12% reserve. So the multi-year projection on column for 18-19 shows that we have projected at this point about a 12.2% reserve for this year. So the rest of the multi-year projection, we're assuming the salary increase for this year takes effect, which already has. We did the retro amounts in the November paycheck. We're assuming that we have a 5% total compensation increase for 1920, as well as the revenue from the new parcel tax is accounted for in the 1920 budget there. We are assuming that we have no more new one-time funds from the state, and that we will spend all the one-time funds that we have sitting now that I just talked about. We are not expecting an increase in enrollment, which would make a big difference in not in our revenue, but in our expenditures. So we think that our enrollment is leveling off. Decrease in contributions to the food service fund, and continued payment on the COP for the Daly City Youth Health Center just for 1920, and then it'll be paid off. So that is not in the 2021 budget. What is unknown at this point that I think we'll be able to talk about in our next conversation about the budget is there is a chance that we're going to have to pay a penalty for our free and reduced lunch audit findings for last year, and I'm estimating that could be around $200,000. And I don't know yet, I haven't gotten word on whether we can pay that over time or if it's something that we have to come up with right away or how that's going to work out. But it is looming, and I will give you more information as I have it. Also, the 3.2% salary increase and open enrollment, both of those things are going to impact our staffing costs. And open enrollment means when people are changing health benefits. So that takes effect in January, and we can only guess what the impacts that's gonna have. And then the 3.2% salary increase, we have estimated the impact for these numbers, but for second interim, it'll be more of a firm impact. We did a lot of other changes in hourly rates for extra pay and in stipend amounts, and so we'll need to make some adjustments to make sure that that is accounted for. The other piece is you probably noticed that some of the salary areas that we had underestimated what the cost would be, and that is primarily due to unfilled vacancies. We still have quite a number of para positions that are unfilled, but that we are starting to fill them. So in second interim, we'll have a better picture of what this year's actual expenditures will be. And then, as we mentioned before, the low-performing student block grant is not accounted for in here at all, neither on the revenue nor on the expenditures. And that is about $197,000 that we will get. It'll be similar to the educator effectiveness block grant, where we have to write a plan. As soon as we have the plan in place, we can start spending the money. And I think we only have till the end of next school year, right? I think June 30, 2020 is when it has to be spent by. So as far as reserves is concerned, I just wanted to mention, as we move further into basic aid, we lose our safety net. So when you're looking at this, this picture, as the blue bar moves further from the orange bar, if something happens with tax revenue, the orange bar is where we land. That's the lowest we can go. So as we move further away from it, the more volatile the more risky our budgets will be. And so, as you have probably heard before, the recommendation that's widely known for school districts is to carry a 17% reserve. That's regardless of whether they're LCFF or basic aid. For basic aid, the recommendation is even a little bit higher. We have never carried a revenue, a reserve that high typically, and we haven't really had the need to, but I think that the board should consider increasing the reserves that we carry. Just for comparison, in 16-17, the most recent information available, the state average for high school districts reserve was 17.25%. So, and that's all districts, not just basic aid districts. So, just something to consider and something we'll talk about as we start making decisions. So the next step is we have a work study in January, and I think that is going to be the best place for us to talk in depth about the impacts of these projections, and also talk about what needs the district is facing, whether or not to start putting more money into retiree planning, like a lot of districts are doing, or not. We'll be able to have those more in-depth conversations at that work study in January. And And then the second interim report will come out in February. And then we'll start talking about budgeting in April and May.
Questions, comments?
I mean, the end of the CSBA, the state of the state, I thought was really good in terms of budget and finance. We had a really good representation from the school services. I forget the name of that group. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes, that one.
Gray. Yeah.
John Gray, and then the head of AXA. And so, yes. And again, one stirs and purrs and picking up that debt service. And then the other thing is that Governor Newsom has big ideas for early education, but he has not talked about where he's getting that money from. And so being mindful that, there's going to be a lot of lobbying that he not take it from Prop 98, but he still has not been really clear about where he's going to get the funding from early education. So that's another consideration to take in. And then that the recession is coming, winter is coming. And so to me, putting priority on having a reserve, because it is hitting some districts already. I mean, Redwood City Elementary School District had to close, I can't even remember how many schools they had to close, 4, and because of declining enrollment and the influx of charter schools, plus looking at their future obligations that they're going to have to carry, certain PERS and all the other things, they had to close schools. So I'm feeling really blessed that we are not in that situation, but it could easily be us. So continuing to be very fiscally minded, I think is key. So thank you again, Tina, for always taking good care of our budget. And I'm looking forward to discussion in January. And these are all the things that I have on my mind when we're looking at the budget, especially possibly even looking at the over 100% as like one-time funds, like not really being too building that anything that's over the 100% to into our everyday operations budget, I think is something to consider.
Yeah, I just want to echo that, which is at the CSBA training where they have you bring your budget, the reserve is like something that always comes up where people are, for our district, our size, to have our current reserves is something that always comes up, whether it's the person running the session or just the people at my table. They're like, oh, whoa, like, really? Because it's like, it's a little risky, right? And, to echo Kalina's point, I mean, Oakland's, just committed to closing 24 schools, last week. 24. So it's, you've got to be very, very, very careful right now. And so I appreciate, this opportunity we have, to hopefully get near average. I mean, I don't know, that's something that always is, there's a few things that we stand out in one of those little training sessions, and I know the reserve has come up in a couple of the sessions that I've attended. So thank you for thinking of that.
Uncharted territory in many ways. I mean, just thinking about, the MYP from last year where you were talking about us flipping back and forth.
Yeah.
And to be in a position like this is both exciting and startling at the same time.
I mean, the thing that's startling is that the base isn't moving. Like, that's crazy.
Right.
I mean, that base is not really moving in the way the rest of the economy is. I mean, that's like the perfect chart to reflect California's lack of funding in public education. So it's hard that, part of the local control is that this is where they're really gonna look for us to fail, is in this particular area. So this is where I want to show them that we can actually handle the budget a little better than they've been doing.
Yep.
And show that we are worthy of having the local control.
The really volatile districts, I mean, when they have, districts that are significantly over basic aid, because it can, fluctuate significantly, especially in smaller areas like our, with a smaller staff size per se, when you're working with the budget. When they budget it in, I'm just curious, do they do like one-time money to staff, or what do they do kind of to make sure?
I
Okay.
don't know. I guess
yeah,
that's a
that wasn't
that's
a fair
good
question. I didn't ask in
Um,
advance. I was just curious. Like, I can understand the hesitation of building, salary schedules over like what is not guaranteed. But I was just curious. At some point, like, we do have more money. Where do people invest the uncertain money? Is it given like one time? I don't know. That was my.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you don't know. I mean, I think that the districts we
One-time.
have around here, no, he's just talking, do we?
One-time money.
I know, but he's saying, do we consider that extra that's on top of the LCFF as one time? And I don't think the districts around us are doing it, but the districts around us are not at 110, they're at 160, 170. So maybe their top 20% they do, I don't know. So I guess that's the question. It'll be good for me to have those conversations with the county office and with the surrounding districts.
Right. I mean, because that was my train of thought when I saw it. It was, to me, like 10% over 100 isn't huge. And so, but it is if we've moved that into operating and then that drops and then something happens with, then we come basic, and then we come, LCFF funded. And if we're in the middle of a recession, where the state of California has shown that they will defer funds to public education, I mean, we could just put ourselves in a really horrible position. So, even with their rainy day fund, I mean, it's shown it's still not going to be, enough to capable of covering all of the governmental agencies that'll be dependent on that rainy day fund. So, really looking into, like, having that discussion of what do our reserves need to be in order to say, okay, I'm comfortable rolling some of this into operations, I think is a discussion that needs to be had. Great.
All right, thank you very much. 15A2, the school calendars for,
Oh, yeah, sorry, you guys need to
oh, sorry.
approve.
Actually, Go for it.
You putting me?
I am, because you're going to be leaving soon.
Making you do all the work. Man,
Yeah.
yes.
Motion to adopt 15A1, the budget report. First interim budget.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. 15A2, thank you for the reminder, I forgot. 15A2, 2019-20 and 2020-21 school calendars. Ms. Van Roophorst.
All right, so these two school calendars that are before the board today have been developed in collaboration with AFT, and we would like you to adopt them, please.
Perfect.
They follow the same pattern as this year's calendar does.
Is there a motion, Mr. Lestro?
Well, first, can I say that I'm very glad that we hadn't made the move to changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, because we've been asked by a couple of different community members, so I'm glad that we went ahead and made that change. And two, I remember the year before I became a board member, parents were confused on what day school started because the calendar was adopted so late. So now that we've gotten to a place that we're adopting calendars, multi-year calendars, I think is huge. So anytime we can celebrate ourselves, we should. So thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Now.
All right, Mr. Lestro.
Motion to adopt 15A2.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item 16, consideration of future agenda items without Mr. Lestro.
So we are planning to have another board retreat, our board retreat maybe sooner rather than later, for the new board member, so that we can all get. Okay, so I didn't know if it was.
Say it again.
Have a board retreat.
Yes.
Just to
Yes.
welcome the new board member and
You want to add, well, we have a study session in January for fiscal already, so you want a different one on a different?
Or we can add on to that, just maybe like a mini retreat, just so we can have.
Facials.
Yeah, facials and have some time now to go over some different topics because.
Sure. Let me add that to the macro calendar now.
Awesome. And then we can also add to that agenda discussion of the AEC conference, of the CSBA conference.
And maybe we can talk about what we want to do next on Circle Up.
Yes, that would be great.
So new board member, Circle Up, and
CSBA conference discussion.
Download. We might need to have another retreat. That's getting a lot.
Nothing else. Is there a motion to adjourn, Mr. Lethko?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. Meeting adjourned at 9:19.
Oh, and we're.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're adjourned.
I
Sorry,
thought
my bad.
We got some good.
Didn't see it. We're adjourning tonight's meeting in honor of 4 persons. Virginia Price, the grandmother of JUHSD systems engineer Tim Cummings. Mrs. Price passed away in early November of this year. Lisa Schroeder, the mother of JUHSD Transition Services staff member Kim Schroeder. Mrs. Schroeder passed away on Tuesday, November 20th. Margie McCarthy, the wife of retired JUHSD principal and director of adult ed Andrew McCarthy, who preceded her in passing earlier this year. Mrs. McCarthy passed away on Thursday, November 8th. Lastly, a former JUHSD student, Gabe Karakees. Gabe attended Thornton High School during the 17-18 school year and passed away the week of Thanksgiving. Gabe's parents would like to thank the staff of Thornton High School for the help and kindness they have given their son. They will always have fond memories of Thornton. We send our thoughts and condolences to Mr. Cummings, Ms. Schroeder, the McCarthy family, and the Karakees family, along with a host of their friends and loved ones. Meeting adjourned at 9:20 p.m.
Very challenging.
Thank you.
To lose something.
Ask you to look at your calendars for January 12th.